solution. We're only going to have some people participating in how this gets achieved. And the reality is, we need the most vulnerable, marginalized communities, not just to buy into it because they believe in it, but to have the access, the resources to transition into a renewable energy economy and to benefit from that renewable energy economy in terms of jobs, in terms of education, in terms of investment. And that transition needs to happen all across the board. But since we've learned from our mistakes in the past, like with cap and trade and other climate policies, we have unintentionally created these unintended consequences that disproportionately then impact those vulnerable communities. And it's clear to me, and I think many of us here, that those vulnerable communities have been living in a climate emergency for years, if not decades already. So when you use the word climate emergency with them, and you're seeing something in the future that is somewhat apocalyptic, they're already experiencing that in communities like Wilmington and communities like Watts and communities that have prevalent industry, vehicular traffic and refineries and oil drills. And it's whenever I go to Wilmington, for example, I get itchy all over my face, my lips, my nose, and I can't breathe as well. And this is whenever I go to Wilmington, and I can't imagine living there. So maybe you can go on to the next couple of slides, because I think where there's
I just realized I don't have you on.
Yeah.
Just a second to present.
Great.
Sorry.
So the one that says the purpose of the office, which is like maybe 2 slides later. Yeah. This one. Okay. So I want to share the core functions of the office. First, it's to ensure that all climate policies are built on equity and justice, which is what I just discussed with you, and to coordinate city leaders to bring an equity lens to LA's Green New Deal and improve accountability and metrics via community engagement. So, which brings me back to the structure of the office. We're going to be having and hosting these ongoing community assemblies on various topics that a stakeholder engagement design task force will develop with me, which will include members of the community, members of the city, some experts. So we're still in the process of designing the stakeholder engagement design team itself. And then there's the commission, right? We haven't launched the commission yet, but the mayor, the council president, and the chair of the Energy and Environment Committee, or ECAGER, will be the ones appointing the commission. It's like a 19 voting members, but 26 members total. And it's a very large commission, but because we wanted to make it, the designers of the mandate and the motion wanted to make it inclusive, they kept on adding more, right? It's like 7 community members from frontline communities, 3 people from the local indigenous communities of Los Angeles. We also have labor represented, environmental justice organizations represented, and then experts from the city that work on water, air, infrastructure, utilities, energy issues, to be there to advise, but not to vote. And the interesting thing about this commission, if I can get a little bit in the weeds, is that it advises the council, and it advises the mayor's office, and it also works closely with me, so that there is like this whole system of checks and balances. Most commissions are normally appointed by the mayor only, right? The mayor makes all the appointments for the commission. But in this case, I think it was designed in this way so that the city council could have some, not just buy-in, but lead with some love, so that it knew that there was a collaboration there. So really, it's a conversation between the council, the mayor, the community leaders in the commission, myself, and then everyone who joins in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through community assemblies or through your advocacy, right? And then this commission will also have a equitable climate action roadmap. So it's going to set priorities. in the first 6 months of its launch, so that we can not create another plan, not create another strategy, but actually put some teeth into the existing plans that, like the LA's Green New Deal or Clean Up, Green Up, and other policies that have been passed. We want to make sure to move those forward. So there's a lot of focus on hitting the ground running, moving forward, but not until the commission is established. We're having these community assemblies, and we have this roadmap to guide us so that we can prioritize what it is that we can work on and balance that with what capacity we have to work on them, right? I already said that I'm going to help facilitate the Climate Emergency Commission, and we're going to do this with innovative governance, meaning we really want the voice of the commission and the communities to be like the star and influence policy and influence how we implement policy. And the city is like moving on a lot of different environmental issues. And I think under the leadership of Mitch O'Farrell, who's the chair of the Energy Environment Committee, he wants to really focus on quite a few things. So, for example, we're going to have to decide as a climate office what capacity we have to work on which policies. I don't think we're going to have the capacity to work on every environmental and EJ policy at the moment, but that's our goal, right? To be able to not just work on those policies, but also create more accountable policy making by integrating how we measure through metrics, whether it's greenhouse gas reduction, green jobs, toxics in our air, and some of those projects, luckily, fortunately, have already been started with the Mayor's Office of Budget and Innovation, with sanitation. So I'm actually doing this landscape analysis of every bureau, office, department that has begun to do some of these analyses and metrics, and combine them so that we have one central hub of being able to look at these numbers, and that we are sure that these numbers are reliable and scientifically kind of approved, and that we can print them in the future, and that they give us, they help to build trust with all of you. Like when we say we created whatever 500 jobs, I want that to be a real number. When we say we reduce greenhouse gas emissions by X amount, I want that to be as real numbers possible. And the good news is that we have been partnering with firms and NASA and other great scientific minds to be able to come up with models that I think, and it is my hope that we can share with other cities, maybe with the state, maybe with the federal government. If you could move to the next slide. This is sort of a visual of how I see the Climate Emergency Office connected to so many entities, right? We're within public works. So we want to create a workforce pipeline and procurement system that is equitable, or help improve our current workforce pipeline and procurement system and make it more green and make it more equitable. We want to rely on great laws like Healthy Plan LA, Clean Up, Green Up, the Sustainability Plan, which is now LA's Green New Deal. We report and work and collaborate directly with the mayor's sustainability team, but also the mayor's Office of Budget and Innovation and his resilience office. So like there's a lot of great work happening within the mayor's office that I believe we need to continue in some way, shape, or form moving after the 2 years are over. And then we want to always highlight our stakeholder engagement and model that stakeholder engagement, because that's something else that other cities are also trying to create and work out, is how to work so collaboratively with communities. And you guys are a great example. Like the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance is a fabulous example of one way the city is really making an effort to create this engagement. But I think, Lisa, if I can take the liberty of saying, the way that this is a little bit different is it was shaped not just with the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance, but with environmental justice organizations, economic justice organizations, labor organizations. So there was a real effort to create a coalition of organizations that represented different facets of different communities throughout Los Angeles. Next slide, please. And this was my original, timeline. I said, look, if I'm gonna create an impact within the next 2 years, I can't take longer than 18 months to get there, right? So, but, as none of you, I'm sure, are surprised, it's a lot harder to move things within the city than even I anticipated, and I've worked at the city before. But the bottom line is this: once we get our commission launched, and I'm hoping that's going to be like within the next month, we can begin moving forward a lot faster. And I'm already beginning to figure out how to design the curriculum for these community assemblies and bringing together the stakeholder engagement design team in order to do that. And then I am sure that your organization will be a big part of that, how we design participatory curriculum that engages various parts of the city and advocates of the city. Next slide, please. And this, I already went through this, I think, but the departments that will mostly be involved in the commission itself are DWP, LA Sanitation, Department of City Planning, Department of Transportation, Bureau of Street Services will also be there, or Streets LA, they're calling themselves Streets LA, and the Office of the Petroleum Administrator. And then others will be invited, but these are actually the offices that are named within the legislation itself. And all of us will work together to create this strategic roadmap to be in alignment with the goals of LA's Green New Deal. Next slide. And this is just a summary, right? My priorities are to begin the community assemblies, complete the stakeholder engagement design and curriculum, launch the commission, and create this equitable roadmap, and basically begin to address all the issues that you guys work on all of the time and are in LA's Green New Deal, but in a way that that involves and engages this innovative governance model that I think is really key to how we create legislation in the future. And I know all of you have experienced frustration, red tape, roadblocks, gatekeepers, and we're trying to diminish a lot of that with this office. So I think that's what I wanted to say, and then open it up for questions.
Thank you. Yeah, so so you can just maybe chime in or raise your hand. And and yeah, Dan, I can see you, but you might need to raise your hand like with the raise your hand feature. But Dan, go ahead.
Hi, I'm interested in.
I'm sorry, can you introduce yourself, please, before you speak? Thank you.
Sure, I'm Dan Kegel. I'm the chair of the NCSA Energy Committee, and I'm also a member of the UNNC Environmental Committee. I have two questions. One is, so the building code now requires solar on new roofs. Is that true? And are they actually getting installed? I haven't noticed any.
If that's part of the building, well, the decarbonization bill, the decarbonization legislation has not yet passed.
No, this is the existing state thing that went into effect January 1st, 2020. The state requires it.
Yeah, I don't think that we've begun to do that here in Los Angeles. I think what we're trying to do in Los Angeles is recover from the pandemic, get these dollars down from the Biden administration for both the pandemic and economic recovery. And then when we get the climate recovery and infrastructure dollars, then I think we can begin to rebuild the capacity to enforce some of this legislation. I think,
So
yeah.
you realize this is a state requirement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't, to be totally honest with you, I haven't even been briefed on all LA legislation yet. So I'm still being briefed on LA legislation and state legislation. But, I get the sense that every city has, issues like climate policy have sort of taken a backseat to the pandemic. So once we get, I think, past May or June, and we begin to see some of these dollars come in from the federal government and the state government, I think more cities will then have the capacity to begin that kind of implementation. And we've held off on building big projects as well. So I think that's probably, and then there's that issue, right? If the building was approved before the legislation was passed, then they don't have to abide by that new legislation, right?
True.
Okay.
And my second question is there, I haven't seen any metrics on energy insecurity in Los Angeles. Have you?
I know there's been a lot of discussion about it, and there are equity metrics at LADWP, but I have not seen them. So that is a very good question and something that I need to dig into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Rosalind, you wanted to say something.
Hi, Marta. I have two quick questions. The first is—
And Rosalind, sorry, can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm the stakeholder rep from the Hollywood United Neighborhood Council. And two quick questions. I'll just say them both at the same time. The first is, how do you see biodiversity being a part of the response, since it's a critical part of both adaptation and mitigation for climate change in cities? And B, how do you see figuring out a strategy to get LA to speed up its response, given that this is an emergency?
Great. Well, this is a really great question for Andy Schrader and Koretz's office, because they have been spearheading, all of the biodiversity, not just legislation, but funding for the city of Los Angeles to implement, strategies, plans, and analyses to protect the biodiversity that we have and expand the biodiversity that we have. And right now, our biodiversity division is housed under LA-San or LA Sanitation. So we have, I believe we have like 3 staff members in that division that have dedicated a lot of time to do kind of what I'm doing, like collaborate with all the different bureaus and departments and find out how we can, align, for example, urban forestry, align rec and parks, align the Bureau of Sanitation in all of and city planning in all of our collective efforts to protect hillsides, for example, to protect trees, to protect ecosystems. But I agree with you; it's absolutely necessary, and I think the city has put a lot of emphasis on the protection of these types of ecosystems. I think the challenge for most cities, including Los Angeles, is integrating, aligning, unsiloing, and working together so that there is a more systemic response for issues like this one, so that there aren't inconsistencies among the different bureaus and departments in how we protect and defend and expand our biodiversity. But I think that we're moving forward and we're making progress. And I think this actually all of these issues deserve its own panel and its own discussion. And the next time I'd like to invite both Andy Schrader and the biodiversity unit so that we can have a more in-depth conversation about it. But I think we're far better off than we were 5 years ago on this issue. And I think Koretz's office has more legislation planned to protect that unit and expand it, if that helps.
I mean, speeding up to meet the emergency.
Yeah, I think how should I, yes, I think we are. We're speeding up, and we actually only have these next, I see it as these only next 18 months, right? To speed up and solidify and create sustainable policies, offices, departments to address all of these issues. So I know we're already behind the 8 ball, but LA is still, attempting to be the leader here. And I think that what has been missing are these intricate conversations with not just experts, but those who don't understand the importance of biodiversity and want to build, and how does building new housing, new buildings affect our biodiversity? It has a tremendous impact. So I feel like I'm having a conversation with friends here, but I think you all understand the challenges that we have faced and that every city faces. We're on the climate crisis, in other words, is a humanitarian crisis. It's a political crisis. It's a social justice crisis. It's an economic crisis, and it's something that's affecting the world. And I really appreciated the summit that you had, Rosalind, on what everybody can do in the world, in the United Nations, to address this issue. And our actions do have to be local, and we have to attempt to be the model in everything that we do, so that other cities and other areas of the nation and the world can follow. And I'd like to remind everybody, I've only really been here a month, but I accepted this because I know the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance has done a lot to create this office, but it takes time to be an expert and briefed on all of the policies. But I guess we should, have this conversation again on biodiversity and invite those folks who are closest to the policy and closest to the work, so that they can explain to you what they're doing and how fast it can move.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we might actually talk about biodiversity next month. That's very likely.
Okay.
Now I might say more about that at the end of the meeting. Ida, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Right.
Thank you so much for being here, and I'm so happy to hear that the city's finally doing something. Every little bit counts. My question is kind of broad, but also specific. I want to know, what can neighborhood council specifically do with this office to get things moving, and as well as express our concerns, even though we're one city, and there's definitely common issues. Each city has its own things going on. I'm in Los Feliz. We are dealing with the Hollywood plan update, and we're kind of going back and forth between the council members, as well as all these planners, and there really is a lack of vision of climate change in the plan, as well as what the council member wants to do. And I feel like there's just this lack of future vision. I think people are thinking in this like what's it called? I don't know. Backwards, basically, and looking at what the policies are now, and not anticipating what we're going to have in 10 years, and the fact that, like you said, we can't just build on top of each other and create more just kind of increased temperatures and whatnot. So I guess it's like the specific question. And how will this office deal with will they at all deal with local policies or local requests from neighborhood councils, for instance, like increasing bike paths or rezoning places? What will be the connection between the local districts and this office, or is it going to be more broad, looking at policies only affecting city level?
Well, going back to my initial comment, we're going to have a roadmap. And I think because of the growing capacity of this office and where we are right now, we're going to have to select like 3 to 5 main areas where we feel we can have an impact. in the first couple of years. And I think when it comes to zoning and land use, you're still going to look to the Department of City Planning for that leadership, for that information. But the way that I think this office can have an impact on areas that are outside of, say, our roadmap, outside of our lead priorities, is by having access to me and telling me, look, this is a current issue that we're having in Hollywood right now, and we'd like your advice on how to push this idea forward, or advocate for this, legislation. And I want to. It's almost like I'm an office of public engagement, is what I'm trying to say. And you can look to me to give you support and advice on how to make your engagement much more effective and much more productive when you're working and navigating through the city. And I'm here to help with that as well. I just want to, make sure that we continue to work through the avenues of those offices and those departments that are already slated to have that capacity to support you, but I can maybe help expedite it, right? I can help, put it on the radar. And if it's something that is already on the radar of certain council members, we can find ways to bring it to them again and make sure that they know that you all are working on this. I hope that makes sense. So we really need to launch our commission. We really need to have this roadmap, and we really need to prioritize because I think it is important to manage expectations, and ensure that you all know what we can do and what we will do, and where we can help and be supportive.
Thank you. And to follow up with that, how would we be able to contact you if we need some advice?
Well, I already have a website. I have an email. Lisa, Ernie, and some of the other board members already have it. So I could, you could go to them and get it from them if that helps.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
I guess that means you have to be nice to us. Is that how that works?
Who, me?
No, anybody who wants your email. I feel like we have a coveted resource.
Oh,
So I love it. Jocelyn, you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I'm Jocelyn Yager Rosenthal, and I've been a member of 2 neighborhood councils for many years in the past, the Echo Park and the Rampart Village. I just want to bring up a couple of issues that I'm very passionately involved right now. Well, one is the composting toilets, and I know that this is it's very under the radar for maybe it I don't know how many 0.01% are aware of the of this resource, or the possibility of weaning ourselves from the exorbitant use of energy and water in our current sanitation system. So I guess in terms of the Green New Deal, that certainly is part of this whole, big plan. The other is more in the weeds, and I want to ask you how your office maybe would have helped me or our committee in pursuing the Lotus Festival being zero waste. As part of the Echo Park Neighborhood Council,
Definitely. Do you want? I was going to order veggie burgers.
Oh dear, whoever's ordering veggie burgers, can you mute yourself, please?
So anyway, that I was involved in that for couple of years and got nowhere. But is that something that your office would have been able to help us with, the neighborhood council at that point?
I mean, I think I would have been able to help you navigate the red tape and sanitation to get you to the dialogue and the solutions that you were proposing and how to make that happen, right? I could bring people to the table that would actually operationally be able to support that kind of a goal.
Right.
And you know, I'm sorry that you weren't able to accomplish very much in the past, but I do know that LA San very much sees itself as a, you know, an environmentally focused and even environmental justice focused bureau of the city of Los Angeles, and it wants to show its leadership there. And when you were saying about composting, I don't know if you know about LA Compost and the composting system the city of LA already has, and the fact that we're contemplating the soils initiative. So maybe, you know, I could connect you with individuals that are, you know, writing up that legislation and with LA Compost, because it sounds to me like sometimes there are so many different organizations working separately, just like the city does sometimes, that the people at the city have a hard time combining and integrating that so that it's reflected in one smooth legislative process and that it all gets done.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
I think our ad hoc group would love to have that information.
Sure.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Joanne.
I'm Joanne D'Antonio. I'm chair of the NCSA Trees Committee, and I've been involved in the tree preservation movement for the past 7 years. So I'm pretty deeply into it. I served on the DUDEC report, which I hope you will read. You know, there were so many times when City Council was asking for this report and that report on trees. So we made them the report to end all reports. And what's happened is there are no more City Council motions asking for reports regarding trees, but unfortunately, there's nothing going on. So what happens, and I really want this to be kind advice, but we've had a city forest officer that we fought to get, and I don't think there's been any action in the 18 months she's been in office except a lot of talk. And the city has, I think, a lot of talk and a lot of reports, good reports, but very little action. And I don't know if this is on purpose or if people are just, you know, trying to be fair and listen to everybody and so forth, or if it's check the box. We've done our community outreach. So I have a few questions. Like,
can I interrupt you for? I want you to ask your questions, but have you all worked with the City Forest Advisory Committee?
I'm a member.
Oh, you're a member. Oh, okay, great. Because I had a meeting with Shelley and Cindy. I had a meeting with Shelley and Cindy Huback. So, okay, good.
Yeah, okay. Behind the scenes, I got Shelley appointed chair. So Shelley used to be on the board of the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance and was my liaison for the Trees Committee. So as I said, we're very deep in this, and we're after 8 years, we're kind of frustrated. So and I'm looking for help here, because we have these wonderful reports like the biodiversity report and the DUDEC report on trees, and still every day, you know, the developers come in and cut down all the trees, and it goes on next door, and everybody is crying about the old trees getting cut down. So I have a question, like, why are you not having scientists, environmental scientists on your commission? Because what's happened is we have so much insular going on with the same city council people, the same people at Urban Forestry and Streets LA, and I'm on first name basis with all these people. And it's not that I dislike anybody or whatever, but I feel that if this commission and your department is in fact an emergency, you have every excuse to get things to happen faster. And what I'm trying to suggest is that maybe you can cut through some of this air, I call it air talk, because the city is full of air talk, and you know, and really try to get some action. So here's one suggestion that we're trying to get. We're trying to get in the Urban Forestry Division, an environmental planner that works with the planning department to look at properties before they're designed, when they're just a figment of somebody's imagination. They've just purchased something. So based on property purchase, that an environmental planner meets with the owner and says, what trees can we save here? And do you really need to relocate the driveway to the other side and take out that, 50-year-old mature, canopy tree, just for the sake of the fact that you want to move the driveway to the other side? Because what happens is when we go to the Board of Public Works, they say, oh, this is too late in the game. The plans are in. This is like millions of, have been put forward and it's too late. And so we say, okay, it's too late.
Public Works or planning?
What?
When you go, you were saying the planning department and then the Public Works department.
No, I'm saying that there are hearings at the Board of Public Works for tree removals, more than 2 trees. So let's say you have.
Yeah, I understand. No, I fully understand.
So then they all say that comes at the end instead of at the beginning, and they're frustrated. I mean, they're nice people. They're great people. That commission is extremely frustrated. And they say, we're getting this too late. So we have suggested, all of us, CFAC, we have suggested that we get an environmental planner. They have these in other cities. We're just actually a behind city. We're not an ahead city. And we need the environmental planner to work with the developer and say, which trees can you maintain? Which ones have to go, which ones don't, and get the developer, even if they have to remove some trees, leave them there till the last minute so that they don't have to get, right now they get removed and the property sits there vacant for 7 years. Those ecosystems.
This is I was going to say, this is the kind of in-depth conversation we should have with Rachel. And I want you, I want to enlist because you're new. And Rachel knows all this. I talked to Rachel. Together, like maybe this requires like a convening with everybody, CFAC, Rachel, planning, Public Works.
It's in the air. In fact, I met with my council office. This is not my new idea. I met with my council office and he said, oh, Paul Koretz's office is interested in an environmental planner. What do you think of that? So they all know. So I'm looking for your support too, that if you care about trees, and I don't know if you do, you and I are new to each other, but if you do think that trees have an environmental status, which if you go to the city tree inventory, it'll tell you how much each tree contributes each year.
Yeah, I had a 2-hour meeting with Cindy and Shally, and maybe you could talk to them, but they definitely care about trees, the environment, sustainability, all of the above. And I guess, of course you have my support. Of course I care about trees, but I do know that we have to convene all of the bureaus and offices and, folks at the city who already, are responsible for either planting trees or deciding where a tree goes or deciding, development plans or deciding public works plans. All of that has to be unsiloed. The issue that you're saying is not unique to trees. Yeah, no, but having a convening with all of them together is different than having them all know about it, right? And Shally and Cindy wrote an excellent letter to
I was part of that letter.
Okay, great.
Okay, and I've circulated it to our trees committee. But what I'm trying to get is you, Marta's support for this, because we have a lot of support right now in the city for this idea. And we just, since you're an emergency office, what I would hope is that you can help us expedite from your end and say, yes, this is a good idea. We should move with this. I'm not interested in more air talk because we've had lots of it. We've talked about the environmental plan with every one of the people you've talked about. And what we're trying to do is get it funded now.
Right. Well, the qualifying word in my title is mobilization, right? So mobilization meaning we want to engage many voices and engage many voices on the priority policies that are going to be indicated in our roadmap. And our roadmap is going to be determined by our commission. And the only way that I can support you right now is through CFAC, right? And following through with CFAC and ensuring that you guys are navigating this in the best way that I know how to advise you to navigate this. I don't have the power of an elected official to just make a statement and say, this is, I can say it, but it's not like the city's just going to then say, oh, Marta Segura said this was an emergency. It's a very, very collaborative process in order to get something like that done. And I know you've been working really hard on it, and I really appreciate it. And the best that I can do is offer my advice to you, Shelley and Cindy, and have maybe another conversation with Rachel in the room and others in the room so that we can see what's holding this up. You know, identify right there with the people in the room. Why is this taking so long? Why is this still happening?
Well, it's a relatively new idea, but it's a matter of funding it. I think everybody's for it. But I'm looking for support.
And I just want to reassure you that we all feel this way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is great. I think this is a great example that we all can learn from, but I do think we should move on. So Marta, if you want to have any closing words, okay. Not for you, because there are more people in the queue, but I did like this
long, but it's kind of an important idea.
It's an important issue. Our trees are very important. And I actually think the conversation about how we navigate the city is one that applies to so many of our challenges. So I think it's important on multiple levels. So thank you. Christine, you wanted to chime in.
Hi everybody. Sorry, my house is, I'm slowly shifting to mood lighting. It's not on purpose. That's just what's happening as the sun goes down. My name is Christine. It's my first time finally getting to one of these meetings. Thank you. I live in Elysian Valley. I'm the director of an organization called LA River Communities for Environmental Equity. Our primary focus is on air quality, clean air, along the LA River, and particularly as it relates to the Metrolink Central Maintenance Facility. I just want to say two things about that with a focus on air. Eric Garcetti, when he was our council member, was very involved. Eric Garcetti has not taken any meetings with us. I've tried to get office hours to talk about the Metrolink Central Maintenance Facility and have never gotten office hours. We've had a wonderful new CEO who has who's really been attentive to the community, but she's moving to Metro, which is great because we need her there too. But I just want to say that there are, we're not alone, but you have a situation with the Metrolink where they have permission to be here on the LA River. They are this joint powers authority. So when you want to call and report, say, I documented a silica dust cloud coming from the facility blowing into Cypress Park at 4 a.m. by myself in barefoot with an iPhone, right? There should be somebody watching this place. I guess what I'm trying to say is we need more than like our neighbors to be saying, hey, this is a major pollutant. This is a major problem. Idling engines, maybe they're cleaner when they're running around. They're not cleaner when they're idling in our communities. And I hope that we can also improve even just that, though. There's so many limits. Like
Christine, I just wanted to highlight Ceci Dominguez, because when I was with Eric Garcetti's office as his district director, Ceci was the first one to call me about that issue.
Yes, Ceci's amazing. We worked together on this.
Yeah,
she's
and even then when we pulled in the state, because it is a multi-jurisdictional issue, right? And we pulled in Gil Cedillo, and now Gil Cedillo is a council member. Kevin De Leon, who was a senator, is now a council member. Both of them should be able to help us really navigate this issue, especially since it's an issue that affects both of their respective constituencies.
Well, it's really falling through the cracks. I just wanted to tell you from my perspective, and Ceci can speak for herself if she chooses to speak tonight, or we can speak at another time. But I feel our council member has lost interest. We just went through a whole series of meetings with Metro for noise and vibration study. And there were days where we were literally like, is anyone here except for the 8 of us from this community? Who is here who doesn't work for Metro? Who is here who doesn't work with Metrolink? You know, we really feel like we have lost this. It's a complicated and an enduring issue, but I really just want to say, please, like, get somebody who can be part of your board. I'm also sitting on the Streets LA Advisory Council. Like, I have some sense of how these things work, but I just want to say, I feel like we're falling through the cracks and it's exhausting. And
It is. I understand.
One more thing to add, because I don't want to take too much time, but I just want to say, again, understanding the backstory of this issue, the city of Los Angeles passed an ordinance in the 1990s about gas-powered leaf blowers. I have used and called all the appropriate numbers to report gas-powered leaf blowers in our neighborhood that is already suffering a lot of air pollution, and nothing comes of it. I understand it's complicated. I understand that people are trying to make a living and that became a political issue. But I'm begging you to do something to enforce this law, provide alternatives to those workers, and get the city to lead the way we've already advocated so hard to get LAUSD to start using electric on their campuses. But there's zero enforcement. It's a catastrophe for our topsoil. It's a catastrophe for our air, and for anyone suffering asthma and all the impacts we have from this Metrolink facility. Then you've got a day where all these leaf blowers are going, and it's just exaggerated. So, you know, that seems like it should be a low-hanging fruit we can just pick. Like, Glendale is all electric, as far as I know from the Coalition for Clean Air. Glendale, the entire city operates electric blowers. But you go through downtown, everybody cleaning up Los Angeles is using gas-powered leaf blowers. So why can we lead the way with something as simple as that, that's already on our books, and enforce it and make it possible?
Great. Thanks for that, Christine. It's very, very helpful.
I am.
Go ahead.
I'm feeling.
I was gonna read Aida's. She said a motion passed or is pending about idling engines in the city council. So.
I am not aware of that. So if I know somebody is working on something, but I would love if you have specifics, that would be helpful. Marta, yes, I know a few more hands raised. We're going to get to 3 more people and then we're going to move on. Marta, I just want to say, I didn't quite realize that this was going to be, you're sort of the vessel for everybody's angst and frustrations for God knows how many years. And so I appreciate you just sort of being this person who's taking all of it in. And I just want to remind everybody, Marta is one person in what we know is a very, 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 frankly, challenging bureaucracy. So we need to manage our expectations and collaborate with Marta and support her as we move forward. So I just wanted to say that because I'm feeling like I put you in this situation where you're getting a lot of pent up frustration.
No worries, no worries. I remember my days as the district director, but I actually do want. This is very useful for me because I'm seeing the chats and the comments. Seems like some people are really informed about what's going on in the city in regards to leaf blowers, et cetera. So all of this is super helpful to me as I'm still on my listening tour at the city to make sure I am briefed on the policy and legislation so that I can bring it together, consolidate it, and see how we can move forward. But there are a lot of issues, and I respect the fact that, that it's taken too long. I hear you, especially with the pandemic. I know you've heard that excuse a million times, but we are still going through that economic recovery, and we are still getting out of the pandemic, and there are resurgences there. So I appreciate everything you're doing and your patience, but I want to work with you. I want to see these solutions happen. And I, in particular, think that there could be a solution for what's happening with the idling Metrolink trains. I think that's super important. And I'm sad to hear that it's taken this long since Ceci first called me to make something happen. So that's something that's going to definitely be on my radar. Leaf blowers are on my radar too. I have them in my neighborhood. So believe me, that's very important to me as well. Everything you guys have mentioned, is the reason that I think I do what I do and why you do what you do, right? It's just a matter of building that, capacity internally so that I can have the influence that you expect me to have. And so we can work together to make it happen. So it's just about, building those bonds and ties and putting things on the radar and getting them into our roadmap, making it a priority, moving it forward. That's just the way that it works. But I'm here to help.
Thank you. All right, 3 more questions or comments, and then we'll move on. Yes, Emily, you are one of them, but you're not going yet.
No.
We're not going yet. Next is Mark.
Hi, Marta. Congratulations. This is so great what you're doing. I'm for everyone else, I'm Mark Morris from Granada Hills South Neighborhood Council. And I'm just wondering if there's going to be any addressing of building codes here in the city of Los Angeles that are actually pretty antiquated. I know of people that are building structures and are required to have natural gas hookups and infrastructure, even though they're not interested in natural gas at all. And, which is like the equivalent of, in our time, of requiring hitching posts for their horses. It's just, is that going to be addressed? The building codes that might be getting in the way.
Yeah, that I do have a little bit more information on. So there's a building decarbonization legislation that's happening right now, but it's going to require a passage, and it's kind of like the preamble, right? And what's going to happen is they're going to include the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. They're going to include the commission, and we're going to have it as part of our curriculum in the community assemblies. So, but it's not going to be, tomorrow. It may not even come into council for a vote until this summer. I guess the only thing that I can suggest is I'm going to be having a conversation with the leadership at city planning very soon, and I can ask them if there's something that we can do prior to the legislation passing when individuals who are developing buildings, et cetera, want all electric, that they don't want to be forced to hook up with gas. I think that's an excellent issue to bring to their attention. And I'd be happy to bring that to their attention. In fact, I'll bring up all the zoning questions to their attention when I speak with them next week, because that's exactly what we're going to be talking about, right? Thank you, Mark, for that question.
Wow, thank you. Thank you.
And our energy committee is working a lot on the building electrification thing as well. Polly. And Polly, you're muted.
Hello, Marta, and thank you so much for coming. I have always been delighted to know that LA has the Green New Deal, and I actually read it. I perused it, I should say. And one of the things that was really cool is that it had all these metrics, and it had all these methods for seeing if we were on track. And then I even heard our mayor, of course, Mayor Garcetti, speak about it. And I was, delighted to hear him say this was pre-pandemic, that he had started looking at the metrics, I think for 2020, this may have been in January. And he said, and we're on target for the metrics of 2020.
Right.
But I, of course, knew by looking at the document that most of the metrics are like 2023 and 2025. I couldn't find any for 2020, but it meant that he thought we were on the path. And so I understood that the city had enough money by passing this, that we were going to do all the things that make us green by the target date. And the city council, of course, signed on a motion saying they agreed with the LA Green New Deal. Now, what I want to ask you is, I know that the city is, obviously we're in a huge deficit. And you mentioned several times you're counting on money from the feds and from the state. And I want to ask, and also that you want to gather the statistics so we can see if we're meeting these milestones. So I'd like to ask you how much money, you don't have to tell me, like, I more want to know what's the probability that you're going to get the money you need and that the city will get the money it needs so that we can count on this LA Green New Deal happening? Or do we need to really put tremendous pressure on our council people to say, hey, you know, we want this Green New Deal. We're in a climate emergency.
Right.
So that's kind of, I'm sorry
Yeah.
for how long it took, but it's
No.
how much money do you need, and are you going to get it? And does the city have it? Or is this Green New Deal real, or is it like air talk, like Joanne said?
Well, the thing that I've learned about legislation is that, you know, often what's created when it's a plan is great language, but it always needs teeth. Every plan we have is great language, and it might even have metrics, but it still needs teeth. And most of it needs more legislation to put teeth into it. So all of the above, I think we're on track to get the money that we need from the federal government. I just don't know how quickly it's going to be distributed. Nobody does. And the other thing is, we're going to continue to need this advocacy. That's really why my office was created, to facilitate a lot of that advocacy and prioritize and push things forward that we really want to see happen in the next 3 to 5 years. And I definitely encourage, you know, that level of, you know, advocacy to continue, and even more so. We just can't rest, because there's so many competing interests. Like, somebody wants to develop a public health department at the city now, and another entity wants to develop a youth development department. Every bureau, every office, every department wants funding for various things. So I don't know if I mentioned, but I came in during the budget process to defend my budget, right? And although I've achieved that to a certain extent, and I am going to be allocated a better budget for next fiscal year, it's still not what I need. So I'm going to have to use my fundraising skills and raise the balance of the money that I need from whatever, the state, the federal government, maybe even philanthropy, so that I can get the capacity in my office to do the work that we need to do, and to be here for you, and to be responsive, and to put your issues on the radar of the elected officials, and also of our commission. Because if your issues align with issues of my commission, it's going to make it easier for me to then follow through, because it's going to be a priority in that roadmap that I keep mentioning. And that's what my focus will be, is like how to push forward the priority issues on that roadmap that are aligned with the Green New Deal, but it may not be everything in the Green New Deal. It'll depend on our capacity and what the commissioners put on that roadmap, so that we can start working out the kinks, working out the tweaks, eliminating some of the red tape, and making sure that we get there, I hope, within the next 2 years, because then we'll have a completely different mayor, and we don't know what his or her priorities will be, right?
As a follow-up thing, do you need a tremendous amount of money from Biden and from Newsom? Or, I mean, are we talking, you know, what I guess I'm asking is, the money that you need, do we have any remote chance of getting it?
You mean the climate office or the city for the changes that
I mean, for your office and for LA to enact the Green New Deal that it spoke of, we need these legislations. It will cost money. You know, do we have any chance of getting this?
I think we're in a better position now, because I don't know if you've been reading the paper, but they're reinstituting earmarks. So, and we have friendly Congress members like Jimmy Gomez. Alex Padilla has surprisingly been talking about environmental issues quite a bit, and climate issues quite a bit, and removing us from the dependency of fossil fuels. So I think, you know, we also have Kamala Harris. I think we're very well positioned now that the earmarks are back. We have the recovery dollars back. It's just a matter of like, how long are we going to wait for that to trickle in? And then when it does trickle in, we still have to I still have to position our office as a priority. And every office that works on environmental issues has to position itself as a priority to get those infrastructure dollars, to get those climate recovery dollars, to do what it needs to do. And that's where metrics come in. That's where accountability comes in. That's where we want to make sure that those dollars are actually having the intended impact that we want them to have, right? So that's why I'm actually spending a lot of time on figuring out what metrics the city already has created and evaluation tools and inventory tools so that we don't see those dollars dissipate. We see them actually doing the work that they need to do. Right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, one last question. I'm sorry. Oh, Ceci, gosh, and you know Marta. So we are way over time, so I'm going to end it with Emily. I apologize, Ceci. Emily.
Ceci can call me whenever she wants to.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping. Perfect. That was my impression. Emily, go for it.
Hey, Marta, I'm Emily, the environmental chair for the historic Highland Park Neighborhood Council. And one, I just want to say, I am so heartened to hear your resolve and the way that you are responding so quickly to all of these questions, and many things are coming at you. So I'm really stoked to have a woman, a BIPOC woman who's leading this charge, and I'm on your side. And I just want to say the Historic Neighborhood Council is 100% behind what you're doing. Please reach out to me anytime if you need something. We've been able to do a lot of rapid response work, you know, back channel stuff. So I feel like I'm hearing what you're saying, and just looking at your history, you're obviously incredibly accomplished. And I can't wait to see, you know, what it is that you're doing going forward. And I'm just so proud that we have someone like you in an office like this. I mean, it's very inspiring. I understand and hear everybody's frustrations, and trust me, I feel the same way about many things, but this is definitely a huge step in the right direction. So I'm really, really stoked to have you. I wondered if anyone on your commission will be representing from the Air Quality Management District, because I'm very involved stakeholder and a representative with other communities, organizations that work with them. But I just wanted to say, whether you are or aren't, please reach out to me if you want to be, or I'm not by any stretch or measure part of the board. I just have attended with other stakeholders for like the past 2 years and gotten to know a lot of people and sort of the lay of the land. And they've been quite responsive to me, both in good and bad ways. So I just wondered if they were part of the commission, and also, you know, just if you needed any contacts anywhere, please let me know, let any of us know. But I support you. Historic Highland Park Neighborhood Council supports you majorly.
Thank you so much. We will have air quality experts, not necessarily from the AQMD though, but we will have folks there that know exactly what's going on, know the landscape, and I will look to you and ask for your support. And these commission meetings will be open, and you will get to call the people on these commissions and have conversations with them. And I can even convene meetings with some of those commissioners and some of you, so that you can have a direct relationship to those commissioners, because they are community members, many of them. And then there are the experts. I did want to mention that the City of LA, through the Mayor's Office of Budget and Innovation, has created a project called The Air We Breathe. Have you heard of that? Yes. Okay, great. Because it's a predictive tool to project the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in the future. And I really just began to find out about it, but they're going to use really advanced air monitoring sensors, and have a community engagement component to that. And if you want to be a part of that, or anybody here wants to be a part of that, please let me know.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. All
Because
right.
I feel like as it pertains, I mean, air quality is so heavily responsible and involved with global warming that it feels like if you're at the center of Climate Emergency Management Office, it has to be a huge part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Feels like the most emergent thing to me.
Right. And it is even more so than water. It's represented more so than water is, that's for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
But I think water is also very important. So
Yeah.
Let's not go there. Thank you so much, Marta. That was fantastic. You, yeah, and I'm actually glad we ended with Emily, because she ended with an inspired and grateful note. And I hope it sounds like we know a lot, and we can help you know what's important to us. As of course we represent
absolutely
neighborhood councils from across the city. And we do want to support you, and we do know it's a lot, and we know we've given you a lot. And
Thank
there's a
you.
lot to do,
There
but
is, there really is.
we're gonna do it.
Exactly. Thank you all so much. I can't find the words, but I'm really grateful that you all are here. We're going to do this together. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, now we are segueing to Liliana Griego. If I can find her, I will spotlight her. She is with FOLAR, Friends of the Los Angeles River. And I was connected to her when I found out through Melanie Winter of the River Project a bit ago that we have, that the LA River Master Plan is not going the way that I had assumed it was going. So that's been a bit problematic, to say the least. Oh, there, I see her. Okay. Let me make you, let me spotlight you. So, and Liliana is here. We have pulled her away from her mom's birthday dinner. So we need to be especially grateful that she's joining us. But this is a hugely important and time sensitive issue. I'm gonna just explain a little bit about what I know and then really ask Liliana to dive in a lot more. My understanding is that for the last several years, since maybe 2016, 2015-ish, this conversation has been going on for forever. There's been talk about creating a master plan. And my whole understanding that entire time was that we were talking about revitalizing and also renaturalizing the river. Because of course, when we look at the LA River now, it doesn't seem very river-like. And the plan that has been released, it was released in January, if I understand correctly, is really not what we had expected or hoped for. And so it's such a serious issue that many, so FOLAR, Friends of the Los Angeles River, which is the organization that Liliana is with, is on the steering committee for this master plan. And many other member organizations of the steering committee have come together to write a letter expressing their concerns about the plan. So I just want to stress that the plan is, the people on this, the organizations on the steering committee of the plan are not comfortable with the plan. So that's got to tell us something about the process and about the plan. And the board, the NCSA board, has signed on to this letter, and comment period has been extended to May 13th. So there is some time to chime in. So Liliana, thank you. And let me ask, and then I'll ask a question or two, but as always, feel free to chime in. You can raise your hand and we'll try to make this a larger, broader conversation. If you can give us a little bit of background of how we ended up in this situation where we have a plan that we're very, that many of us, I should say, are not happy with.
Yeah, so thanks so much for inviting me to come speak with you all. As Lisa mentioned, I'm Liliana Griego. I'm the Director of Policy and Advocacy for Friends of the LA River. And FOLAR was a steering committee member for 2 years. This process was a 2-year planning process, and then a year gap, really, just with the pandemic and everything. Nothing happened, and then the plan was released in January. And this is supposed to be an update plan from the first county master plan that was done. And lots of different stakeholders were invited. There were several stakeholders that were left out and were not brought to the table, which just starting the process already became a little bit of an issue of not inviting certain people to the table that needed to be at the table. For example, there was no Tongva representative on the steering committee. So brought in some folks, and initially thinking, okay, if this is going to be a county master plan, the county is in a particularly unique situation where they can actually take a watershed approach, meaning they can look at the tributaries, they can look at the main stem of the river, they can compile all the different plans that have happened already, and then take us to that next level that we need to get to for the next 25 years as we think about the future of the river and of LA, and all the different communities adjacent to the river. And we were just really disappointed that the plan didn't take that, and that it just really missed a huge opportunity, especially, we're in a climate crisis, we're in a housing crisis, we're just in this pivotal moment, and we just didn't take it to the level that it needed to go. And so, yeah, there's a lot of frustration in the process. And even now, the plan's been out since January and there hasn't been one public meeting about it. So how is that okay for a 500-page plan that's been out in the public and the county hasn't had one community meeting about it? And so just, the layers and layers of just like disappointment and missed opportunities just continue to pile on.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And I want to, the plan is a bit intimidating, but I actually spent some time with it this morning, and as Melanie actually had recommended to me, I looked at the first pages, and I think for any of you who want to do this, I found it super edifying. It's pages 22 to 29 of the plan. They sort of say, yeah, we know a lot of people don't like this, and this is why we're sticking to our guns. And I want to just share my interpretation of it and hear what Liliana, what you would say, FOLAR and the other organizations that are concerned would say in response. So what they say is, yes, we thought we were naturalizing the river. Yes, we were talking about the concrete out. Well, taking out the concrete. Well, we can't, because we ran some studies, and the gist is concrete actually helps the water move more quickly, which allows more volume. And when you're having a big storm, you need things to be moving quickly so that the water can get, so that there's enough space for the water to get in there so that you don't have a flood. And when you take out the concrete, you will be slowing things down. You will be slowing down the flow, which will increase the likelihood of flooding. And the problem with that is, the solution would be to widen the river. If the river is wide enough, then you have enough space for all the water that would come in a storm. And the problem with that is that you would end up displacing lots and lots and lots of people, businesses, et cetera, because the river is in a city. So correct me if that's you can tell me if I'm misunderstanding or not, and, correct some of that. And then also let me know, what is your folks' response to that argument about not being able to naturalize the river?
Yeah, that beginning section where it's not even part of the plan, it's just like right before you even get into the plan, they just have these questions and they just dismiss the idea of removing concrete to have any type of naturalization. And it's awful that they put that there. It dismisses the plans that have come before it, that have gone through the community process and have the community backing for concrete removal. And it's just a backwards way of thinking. And we are going to request that they remove some of that language, because it just shouldn't, that type of language shouldn't be in a river master plan. Widening the river is one option, but if you take a watershed approach, then you can figure out other areas where you can divert water that would then increase the capacity in certain sections of the river, so that then you could have some type of naturalization where you could have a bit more vegetation in the channel. And so, like, for example, Fuller's been working on a hydrology study, and we've identified, if you look at Tahunga Wash, for example, and there's some quarries up there, and if you just use one of those and divert some of that water from Tahunga Wash, then you're going to be able to increase the capacity in the Glendale Narrows. And so if you're not looking at the whole system, you're missing these opportunities. And that's why the county is missing these opportunities. And they're just having this really narrow focus and then saying, oh, well, the only option is to widen the channel. And if you widen the channel, then you're going to displace homes and critical infrastructure. And so that's just not going to happen. But that's not what we're proposing, right? And that's like just this disconnect. And we're asking that they take creative solutions, looking at a watershed approach, looking at how we can retain water in different areas, like making a floodable golf course, for example, and figuring out these solutions so that then we can figure out how to have a bit more of a naturalized river and not just looking at widening as an option, but looking at other different opportunities for the river. But it's a terrible way to start a plan.
Okay, thank you. That really helps me understand a lot of this better. And I've always been a little bit flummoxed by the term watershed, but I think I'm learning what that means now. And part of what you're saying is that there are all these tributaries that feed into the river, all these opportunities to have the water that comes from the sky be absorbed into our soil and be captured before it goes into our concrete channel. And that the public works folks really weren't thinking about it that way.
Right. And it doesn't even just have to be with the tributaries. It can also just be, how do we have more permeable surfaces throughout LA County? How do we capture that stormwater? Just how are we just more smart about these things? And so it's just a huge missed opportunity to find other solutions.
Okay, that's really interesting. And can you say more about the community engagement? I actually attended, this was, certainly before the pandemic, I attended a session, an outreach session, I guess a couple of years or so ago. And I was frankly super underwhelmed, but I would like to hear a little bit more about what your concerns regarding community engagement were.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a lot to present on. So it was just really broad outreach. It's just like the classic sticker, like, what do you want to see? And the unfortunate thing is, even though it was really general and broad, it was still very clear that ecosystem health and naturalization and access to the river was a priority when they did that outreach. And the plan doesn't reflect that. So even though the outreach wasn't that great, it was still clear what communities were asking, and we still don't see that in the plan. And then, that continues as now the plan is out and there has been no public meeting around it. There was just one, and that was for the PEIR, and they had like 2 minutes for people to make comments, and a lot of people just had questions. And it was clear that folks need a meeting so that they can ask these questions and get their questions answered, so that they can better understand the plan, or at least have an opportunity to make their comments. Because even now, if you want to make a comment, you have to go through their website and through it's like page by page making a comment, which is just, it's just not an easy and accessible way to submit your comments to a plan.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open it up. We have a lot of people wanting to join in the conversation, so I'm going to try to wrap up. What my main question for you is, what can we do? What's next? How can we weigh in?
Yeah. So we've developed a comment portal for folks to submit their comments, hopefully through a bit more of an accessible portal. And so if you go to folar.org, right on the landing page, we have a link that takes you to a comment portal, and we have a letter template, and you can edit it, you can, make it your own, which we definitely encourage folks to do that. Community members are experts on these things. And so, it's good to make your voice heard on these issues. And then, we're, as concerned steering committee members, we've created a community sign-on letter, where we're asking different organizations to sign on to it. So if you represent an organization or a neighborhood council, we're encouraging folks to read through the letter that we've created, and if you agree with it, then to sign on. And I can share some of those in the chat so folks can have easy access to that. And then it has to go through the supervisors to vote on it. And, so just knowing that there are still more steps that this plan needs to go through. And so there are still more opportunities for us to continue to show our concern and push the county to do better.
Thank you. And is there hope? I mean, I know how I sound, but I'm being 100% serious. I feel I'm worried. And by the way, I'm putting in the chat, we have on our website, we have a link to the FOLAR, a lot of the FOLAR content, as well as a lot of really great content as well, in case that's helpful for folks. But you can also go directly to the FOLAR website. But if you want to see just, what a bunch of voices, what a bunch of people are saying about this, you can go to our website. We have a little collection of talks and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. I mean, I feel that frustration. There's definitely days where I'm just pulling my hair and just like, how can this happen? But, as I continue talking to people, as I continue learning that other people have read the plan and are just sharing the same frustration, it just really shows that we all need to organize and come together and show the county, this is not just certain steering committee members who felt like, they weren't heard and now they're like throwing a temper tantrum. Like that's not the case. It's like, this is happening across the county, that people are unsatisfied with the county has presented and did not take us to the level that we need to, and they need to do something about it. So I am hopeful when I talk to more and more people, knowing that they have the same mentality as we do and they have these concerns. And so we just need to show the county, we need to show the supervisors that this is not okay and that they need to do something.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open it up to folks. Ceci, did you want to chime in on this, or is your hand raised from before? Ceci, did you want to say something? Okay, no. Okay. Rosalind, go ahead.
Yeah, two quick questions. The first is, so do you feel like a new study is going to be required that's from that holistic watershed approach? And secondly, do you think that displacement can be completely mitigated, or will there have to be some displacement?
Yeah, so your first question about do we need another plan? We've been talking about that as steering committee members, like, do we need to push for a people's plan and just start from scratch because the foundation of this plan is just so bad? Or do they just need to take a moment and pause and reflect and think, okay, maybe we need to continue doing some more analysis, or maybe we need to look at some other studies and incorporate that into this plan. But yeah, I mean, that is the huge question of, if it's fundamentally broken, then how much work do we need to do to make it better? And do we have that time? And does the leadership, are they going to actually take us to the level that we need to get to? In terms of displacement, if we need to widen the channel, there are areas where people aren't living there and important infrastructure isn't there. For example, the Taylor Yard G2 parcel, which was an old rail yard, and it's contaminated. And that area was identified in a study that was completed in 2016, known as the Arbor Study. And they identified that area for potential channel widening. And that wouldn't displace anyone. It's contaminated land. And if anything, it's an opportunity to heal the land, give the river a little bit more room, and not displace anyone. So, if we can continue to find areas like that, then we're not going to displace people. And then and making sure that we're taking into consideration the necessary policies and programs to make sure that community members aren't being displaced after big projects get planned or implemented through this plan along the LA River.
Okay, thank you. I think Jocelyn, go ahead.
I just want to know, is there a lead, a point person from the county, or does each supervisor have someone in their office that you are working with? Because I guess
Yeah.
follow up to this, I wonder if we can invite someone from the county to speak to us. Lisa.
Yeah, I know that County Public Works, if you reach out to them, which this is like another frustrating thing. If you don't know, then you can't ask. But if you reach out to them and ask Public Works that you want a presentation to be done around the master plan, they will come and do it. I know Atwater Village Neighborhood Council, they requested a presentation from the county and they came and presented to them or virtually came to them. And so that's an option. And then our steering committee coalition has reached out to specific staff members within the different supervisor offices. So there are certain point people who work on river issues and who have been somewhat part of the process and have attended the various meetings. So you could also reach out to them. And if you all want to go down that route, I can give you the contacts for the folks that we've been in contact with, if that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Glenn.
Thanks for the overview. So I'm involved with the folks in the Sepulveda Basin in the Valley, which, as you know, is an effort to, when there are large flood events. I mean, it was put in after the 1938 flood, and it's there to help reduce the downstream flooding impacts. But of course, the city has urbanized so much since the 1940s. I don't know that they quite figured that all out. And so I had just a couple questions, and we have that same issue about flood control versus recreation versus natural habitat, et cetera. But just a few questions on this plan. And I don't need the great details, but I've been at some meetings where questions come and I truly didn't know how to answer it. I did attend several of the public input meetings and, stuck my share of dots up. So, back, 40 years ago, there was a vision of making the river more accessible for walking and bicycling. I think that was a modest ask because it was all closed off, locked up, and just make it more accessible. And obviously the vision has grown since then. So I have a two-part question. Number one, in terms of the plan as it relates to a connected opportunity for public access and recreation, if you could address that, walking and bicycling. Mm-hmm. And then during some of those community meetings, there was some concern, and maybe it was just even reports about the I'm not sure if commercialization is the right word, overdevelopment, some of the proposals, maybe to generate the revenue along certain portions of the river. And I didn't know if you could comment on that as they may or may not be included in this plan. If you know what I'm asking about. I think it was a Frank Gehry proposal, and there may have been some others as well. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So your first question around access and connectivity, one issue that we have with the plan is, they do talk about access. They identify various access points and figuring out way to improve it, improving signage, identifying the bike gaps, and that, those are in the works already with Metro, for example, with the downtown gap. And then they talk about some connectivity loops throughout different parts of the river. But one issue that is just really missing from the plan is just access down into the river. right? We have 2 recreational zones in the Sepulveda Basin and in the Glendale Narrows, and nowhere in this plan is it talking about how you make those areas more accessible and easier to get down. People are kayaking there, people are fishing there, people are bird watching there. And so why isn't this plan trying to figure out how to make it just a bit more accessible? Like, why don't we put some stairs to make it easier to go down? So, you know, they just like really simple things that you would think it would be an easy, you know, low hanging fruit for them to incorporate into this plan. And that's just severely missing within this plan. You know, for me, it feels like more of a park and beautification plan instead of a river plan. And I think, you know, when they talk about access, it is more about walking paths and bike paths and not about access actually down into the river. So that's a big issue. In terms of overdevelopment, the Frank Gehry plan for this project, I hate that it's, you know, always called the Frank Gehry plan, because this is a county plan that the public is funding. You know, this is LA County resident plan. But yeah, so there are no projects being proposed in this plan, which is also just very confusing. Just sites, potential sites for projects. But then there are project examples. So, I mean, you know, again, it's not very transparent. But one of the project examples is a platform park, meaning we put just another slab of concrete on top of the river to then create a park above it and just completely burying the river beneath it. And so, you know, if you're talking about overdevelopment that way, I think that it's a huge issue within this plan that they're even considering it, that they're including it, that then they take it one step further and have it as a project example, because that's definitely you're burying the river. That's not what we should be proposing right now. There's definitely other ways to go about creating more open space for those particular areas, right? Because what they've been saying is, oh, well, we're proposing this because these are communities that are part poor. But I mean, a lot of these areas are also very contaminated. So why don't we decontaminate these lands and create open space there instead of burying our river? So that's still a huge concern. And then the fact that the plan is just very vague, it leaves it open to interpretation. So a big development can be proposed and can seem like it's aligned with this plan because there are no guidelines in this plan. So it's just, you know, we can just start letting in all kinds of things happen along the river, which is going to be really dangerous.
Okay, thank you. Scott.
Hi, thank you so much for being here, Liliana. I wanted to ask about, you know, my frame of reference is the Arbor study, and I haven't had a chance to look at this plan in depth. And so my perception in the past was that, you know, a lot of the talk about naturalization was around these key sites. You mentioned the Taylor Yard, the Piggyback Yard. So I'm just trying to get a sense of, does this plan kind of roll that back? Does it explicitly say that those aren't still opportunities for naturalization, or does it just fail to explore those options further? Can you speak a little bit more about those opportunities?
The latter. It identifies some projects, like there's even a spotlight on G2, and they talk about what the city is doing along that area and what's being planned for that section. And then there are just a handful of projects that they pull in the appendix. There's a list, which is, you would think that the whole list of proposed sites and existing projects would be in the plan, but it's not. The list, if you want to find it, is in the appendix. So if you dive into the appendix, there's a whole list of potential sites and existing projects. And that's kind of what this plan is proposing. And so if you go through that, it identifies if it's an existing project, it identifies what plan that project comes from. And there's a handful of projects that come from Arbor. So it kind of contradicts itself a little bit, saying right in the beginning that you can't have naturalization and you can't remove concrete and you can't have channel widening, but then they still do a spotlight on G2 where they're hopefully going to be doing some channel widening and concrete removal, and bringing that spirit to life. So there is some mention of Arbor, but it's what you said. It's not just building on that. It's just kind of leaving it as is.
Thank you.
Okay, we are very painfully short on time. So I'm going to ask everybody to be very succinct. Christine.
Hi, thank you, Liliana. So good to see you. And thank you, Lisa, for having this conversation. You know, totally with it, already a signer on the letter. But I guess one thing I just want to mention, and we can talk about another time, is I have just been speaking with people who also live here in Allegiant Valley. There's a lot of fear. I'm all for the crack the concrete thing, but then some people, I think they hear that and they think eminent domain of anybody who lives near the river. They think we're in a floodplain and there goes Allegiant Valley, because other neighborhoods aren't, but Allegiant Valley is. So I would like to be able to talk to people in a way that is data based and reassuring. And you know, ever since I moved here, people have been telling me, watch out, they're going to try to take, they want to take the whole.
Okay. I'm sorry, we are super tight on time. So I think you asked your questions. So I'm going to let Liliana answer if that's okay.
Yeah, I totally hear you, Christine. I know that this is an issue. And I think what we're trying to advocate for is that you can have naturalization or concrete removal and mitigate flood risk. That we don't have, we're always stuck in this thing of you have to choose one over the other, right? And so we want to make sure that the community can have both. And so that's what we're trying to strive for. But I'm definitely open to connecting with you and talking with you further on that.
Okay, thank you. Melanie.
Hi, Liliana.
Hi.
So I was a little bit confused with the letter that the NCSA signed on to. It seems to make a request that the County Department of Public Works incorporate your concerns, or that you get an implementation plan. And I'm wondering two things. Given that the letter that you've written is very similar to the letter that the steering committee wrote a year ago with the very initial draft, and that your response is the plan, which is like, yep, not incorporating your concerns. Are you saying we're asking again for Public Works to be the ones to incorporate our concerns? Or are you saying we know that Public Works is not going to incorporate our concerns, and we accept and we're resigned to the fact that this plan is going to be adopted? We're just asking also for I think you said earlier, a people's plan. And that's one of my fundamental concerns with the approach of this letter, because I appreciate that some of the comments have grown in strength and are including some other critical issues, but the ask, which is really the important thing, the demand, or the ask, is so weak to me. I just also want to ask if you have any confidence, having seen Mark Pestrello's presentation at the Verdi Exchange, where he insists that every single word that you put in that letter is exactly what the plan does. Do you have confidence that the people who created this plan and the leadership who led this plan have the capacity or the interest in realizing a plan that everyone wants?
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think because this is such a huge plan and there's so many flaws, it makes the ask hard, because it's not just like, oh, can you do X, Y, and Z, and then check, we're done, now it's a good plan. It's like, it is so much more complicated than that. The foundation is so broken that it is just really hard. And then we're not speaking the same language, right? We're saying you need to take a watershed approach. You're like, oh, we did. Look at all these need assessments we did. We took a watershed approach. We were looking at all park needs in all LA County. We did that. And so we're continuously going back and forth with them on language and what they think they've already done and what we think they still need to do. I think where we're kind of landing right now is that no matter what happens, our concerns need to be included in this plan because it needs to be documented somewhere that there are issues with the plan. And so it needs to be, those issues need to be published within this plan. And we have been talking about like a people's plan, but it's a funding issue. I mean, quite honestly, who's going to fund a people's plan, right? We don't want the county to fund it and lead it because they've already shown us that they can't do that. And so, then we're going to all have to figure out, okay, where's the funding going to come for us to do a people's plan? I think ideally that would be what would happen. But it's like, where are we going to get the funding for that?
I just want to ask why the ask is not set aside this plan. Why is the ask for include our comments in history somewhere, and this plan that we have made very clear will be a nightmare if adopted. We're okay with that moving forward as long as we've had our say. And why there is no broader thinking around, to me, the Department of Public Works. So engineers and landscape architects are the only two expertise on this plan, leading this plan. Those are the last two expertises that should be leading this plan. The county does have planners. The county has access to appropriate expertise that could lead a plan, scientists of all stripes, including social scientists. Why the hesitancy to outright reject this plan and demand that the county, not public works, specifically not public works, but the county do the appropriate plan? Why the reluctance to make that very specific demand? Because you will never get.
I'm getting so anxious. You have no idea how anxious I am, you guys. So Liliana, do you have a one sentence answer for Melanie's very, very important question?
We're trying to ask something that would be reasonably accepted by the county. And so that was, that's what we're trying to come up with at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Ida, very quick question, I hope, with a quick answer.
Thank you. Well, I would like to plug that Full is going to be speaking at a Small Revolutions event.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Maybe you can plug it without me using up my question time. But I think this was really, really informative. I just was wondering if Full has any like materials, or are they going to be doing any informational outreach? Because honestly, they've done a very poor job. I did the event with the EIR, which didn't talk about the master plan this year, and it was extremely confusing and convoluted based on that. And so, and their website doesn't really help. So it's just like, how can we explain to people what's going on? Because it's, even though maybe people think, oh, it's not going to affect me, it's a lot of, our tax dollars. It's still a lot of effort. So it'd be great to get some kind of information out. People didn't, we were trying to pass something at my neighborhood council just to oppose it, and people didn't seem to, we mentioned to oppose any.
I'm sorry, this is not more succinct. We have to aspire to conciseness. Their website has great stuff, and our website has great stuff. Go to the website. There is great stuff there. There really is.
We did an advocacy workshop, and there's a recording of that and the presentation that we use for that advocacy workshop. So I think Lisa has that on the website. If not, it's on our website. So take a look at that, and there's some information there for you.
Devon is enjoying my approach. Okay, Joanne, quick question.
Yes, I'm from the neighborhood council where the Great Wall is, Greater Valley Glen. And I want to know if there are engineers that are experts in taking concrete rivers into natural rivers. And if so, why aren't we recommending that those sorts of people be put in charge of this, and make that our comment to the EIR.
Yeah, I think it's clear that the folks who are running it right now are not the people that should be.
But are there those sorts of experts around that do that? That turn concrete rivers into natural rivers?
Yeah, there are engineers out there that are thinking that way. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's good to hear. I didn't actually know that. That's a great question. Ernie.
Yeah, Sherwood engineers are one of them,
Oh,
if you're interested.
cool. Thank you. Ernie.
Hi, Liliana. Thank you for joining us tonight. You know, a few years ago, I remember talking to one of the heads of public works that was working on this project, and they were arguing that we needed to get rid of the engineering corps, right? The federal level of engineers that was involved in the past. And I think one of the reasons we wanted to get rid of them was so that we could have more community engagement and input. And so I'm wondering whatever happened with that idea of getting rid of them so we can get the community engagement piece. And secondly, can we use that as an example to solidify our argument as to why we need to consider more local community input now?
It's actually, and I'm forgetting where in the plan exactly, but around governance, they do propose that there's a divestment in the Army Corps of Engineers, and there is a slow process around that. One thing to flag though is once you have the Army Corps of Engineers taken out, then it's harder to then get federal funding to help support some of these projects. For example, the Arbor study, where that study was done by the City of LA and the Army Corps of Engineers. And so if we want to see some of those components of the plan come to life, we do want to try to tap into that federal funding. So we just need to make sure that if it's done in the right way and it's done in a transparent way, because the county was already working on that and no one knew about it. And so, you know, that's it. We're not gonna have community engagement at this point if it's the county or the Army Corps. So whoever's in charge just needs to have more transparency, and we shouldn't lose opportunities for funding.
All right, thank you. And one last thing that I meant to ask earlier, this is a county issue, and neighborhood councils are really supposed to focus on city things, but this has huge impacts for the city. Anyway, and it doesn't seem like the city is, it seems like the city is sort of, they have their own plan, they're kind of deferring to the county. I'm just thinking out loud, maybe we should be reaching out to some of the folks on the steering committee that represent the city. There's LA River Works, there's DWP. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that for neighborhood councils that might want to be more focused to their city leadership.
No, I think everyone needs to raise concerns about this, and wherever that seems more appropriate, everyone should do it. They need to hear that people are concerned.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Liliana, for taking so much time with us. I so appreciate you joining us. This was really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, I hope we are supposed to have finished 60 seconds ago. I hope we can stay a little bit more for very, very brief committee updates and any announcements. And I hope you can get your letters in. So I am going to try to share my screen so that I can pull up. It's gone away. This has happened before. I'm not going to share the slides because we've run out of time and because they are not available anymore. So is anybody from advocacy here? Is Cord here? Sorry, I'm trying to see who's here. Okay, I think we're going to skip our advocacy update because we're so far behind. Dan, can you go ahead? Oh, and I know we were supposed to talk about how the NCSA takes positions. We are not quite as ready to continue that conversation, and we obviously did not have quite enough time to have that conversation. Did Scott or anybody else want to give a brief thinking about where, Scott, can you give a brief report as to the board's thinking about how to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, so we're working on some proposed bylaws changes, but, you know, I would just remind all of the reps that we had this discuss. We had a really robust, wonderful discussion last time. And one of the things that folks said they were going to do was, go have conversations in your communities and with your neighborhood councils. So please do continue to do that, because I would like to have a report back session at our next general meeting. And I think at that point, we'll also be prepared to share some more specific language with everyone.
And I know Anne has shared some feedback from Northridge South, and I know Robbie's been having some conversations. Another thing you can do is email me if you have any, like what Anne did with her thoughts, or what her neighborhood council's thoughts. And you can also include them in the evaluation. I put another link to the eval. So if you want to share your thoughts or your neighborhood council's thoughts about this change, put them in there, and that will be a great way to capture them. I apologize that we did not have more time to discuss this tonight. Time is not always our friend. Dan, do you want to give a super brief update on energy?
Yes, the most important thing that's happened recently is the LADWP finished its 100% renewable energy study. I've put a link to it in the chat. Three biggest things that it found are: one, we can get a lot of health benefits by not only if we clean up LADWP's energy, but also electric. That's one thing. Those three things have to go together.
You cut out, Dan, at least for me. You cut out, at least for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, number two, there are a lot of wind and solar and other things that we need to build right now, no matter how the city goes forward. There is a motion in the city council now to ask DWP, or rather tell DWP, to focus on those near-term clean energy improvements so that we can qualify them for support from Biden's infrastructure package. That is the number one thing on my radar at the moment. Getting people to support that city council motion. And you may hear more about that from us in the near future.
You very likely will. Thank you very much, Dan. Muriel, are you able to give a brief update on the Transportation Committee?
Yeah, so we didn't have our monthly meeting this time around, but we did schedule a meeting with Nithya Raman's office regarding new transportation focuses that we would like for her to do, and that's this week. So we will keep you posted on that for our next monthly meeting.
So the meeting we're having, which is Wednesday, anybody's welcome to attend. It's not actually with her office, but it's to brainstorm for things we might propose to her office. So please, if you have a great transportation idea, join us Wednesday. Reach out to us and we'll connect you to that meeting. Okay, Trees Committee.
Yes. This Wednesday at 10 a.m., the Board of Public Works is hearing the letter, the budget request letter that CFAC wrote, and which I distributed to the Trees Committee. They've asked, CFAC has asked, the chair of CFAC, who used to be on the board of the NCSA, has asked people to call in or send a letter of support. And if you need the agenda, which has the Zoom link, it's item 3. I can send you the agenda, and I can, if you need the letter again, I can send it to you. And I also have talking points that I've sent out that you can use in your support of the letter. The letter addresses the mayor's request that there be elements in how funding can be raised, as well as budget asks. And we do ask for that environmental planner in there and a new chief forester for the city, since ours retired and we would like somebody super duper in there. So please do pay attention to the Board of Public Works. They are very nice at call-ins. Unlike other entities in the city that really don't want public comment. So just email me at trees@ncsa.la and let me know you want to help out, and I will send you what you need to know to do it. Thanks.
All right, thank you guys. Any last minute announcements? I want to say Happy Earth Month. And our next meeting is going to be May 9th. We might talk about biodiversity. We might, I really hope we'll be talking more about how the NCSA takes positions. Our next electric vehicle workshop is April 28th with Hollywood United and Central Hollywood Neighborhood Councils. I want to in particular thank Rosalind, who's on this call and who's been instrumental in making this happen. So thank you, Rosalind. And any other announcements from anybody else? I know Ida put the thing, the small revolutions. I think you put that link in the chat, Ida.
Yes, I put the link to register in the chat. It's the one that I just sent right now.
Perfect. And that's more on the river. So if you want more on the river, come to that. And even if you don't want more on the river, come to that. And it's going to be on Earth Day. So there, now you have to come. Any other announcements? Oh, May 9th is Mother's Day? Oh gosh. Glenn is always so good at this. I checked the date. I thought I'd be fine. Okay, well, maybe we're not meeting May 9th. Thank you, Glenn. I apologize that I didn't catch that. Okay, so maybe not. Back to the drawing board. Okay, any last thoughts? All right, thank you guys. Thank you for staying over. Thank you for such a great conversation. I hope you can engage your neighborhood councils on the LA River as well as all the other things we are up to. And check our Submit a CIS webpage to submit CISs. And complete the evaluation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. I'm trying to get the chat. It's not letting me do it. There it goes.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Christine. Nice to kind of sort of meet you. I wasn't familiar with you folks, but I saw you'd signed the letter that we also signed.
Yeah. And you and I emailed a long while back, I think, about, I've been interested in this for quite some time, and our council is not part of it. So hopefully that's something we can change.
Yeah, oh, Legion Valley. Oh yeah, they're no, I really reached,
hopeful. I'm hopeful. But anyway.
I heard Cindy, who's not on this call. Do you know Cindy Hubach?
I know her name.
She has a community garden there, and she really helped me with some electric vehicle outreach there. But she was like, don't sweat the neighborhood council. But somebody else, I'm forgetting who, somebody else, I think it might be Raquel who was on this call, told, oh, I don't remember, I'm not sure if it was Raquel, but apparently, I don't know what's late, but where they are in the election cycle, but apparently there was a lot of, there was potentially a new group of people who were going to join.
That's us.
Oh, that's you.
Yeah, there's
okay, because so that means I heard about you. I don't remember where I heard about you from, but we were optimistic because so you're running?
I am, yeah. There we
okay.
6 women ran, and then we also tried to bring some others along. So, and Ceci was a big part of helping us with that. Ceci was here tonight. So
okay.
So we'll find out. We'll find out. And then if that all comes to pass, I hope to bring us into the group. And we do all of our food distribution for the Mercadito outside the community garden there.
Right. Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to include you on an email because we were trying to do electric vehicle outreach for that area, and we didn't get the, it really does help to have a neighborhood council support, and we didn't get we didn't get the attendance that I wanted.
I think I saw it in their neighborhood watch newsletter. I feel like,
David,
and I signed up to come, but I couldn't come at the end of the day when it was happening.
Okay. Well, David said he would do more outreach, and Cindy said she would help. Because I just want, it doesn't matter to me whether or not people attend a workshop, but I just want people to know about the options available to them.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's good to know somebody else, and it's good to know that you're trying
Yeah.
to get in, because I've just gotten, I mean, I'm a relatively easily frustrated person, so the fact that I got frustrated isn't so interesting, but I got really, really frustrated with that neighborhood council. I was just like, they're not, they don't want to move. They're not interested. They're not, I mean, they just seem more interested in putting up barriers to engagement than actual engagement.
There was nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't.
He's still there.
What'd you
They didn't
say?
do anything for elections. Oh no, I just didn't know if Melanie said something, but there's nothing, they did nothing on, there was no candidate forum. There was
That
nothing.
doesn't surprise me at all. That doesn't surprise me
There
at
was
all.
nothing. Yeah, we were the primary outreach that the election was even happening, so.
Yeah. I mean, I don't
Sad.
understand why people are interested in those roles if they're not interested in the work, unless they're interested in just shutting down the conversation. I don't know what I really don't know what their whole shtick is, but they were chastising me for hosting the workshop on a day that they had a committee. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I went back to their website and I'm like, they don't say anything. They don't even say what their committees are or when they are. And I'm like, that's why I scheduled it then. There was no, how would I have known that it was in conflict with the committee? I had there was no way for me to do that. Anyway, you're getting
No,
me.
I know, but you and I emailed about leaf blowers or something a long time ago. I feel like it was around, I think I got your email, and that's when I was trying to follow up with our school. But
okay, I do not remember. I've had lots of emails about leaf blowers and my memory is not what it was.
Of course.
But there is, I mean, I'll have to read the chat, but I know there are some new thoughts about it. And, you know, now Marta knows that everybody's still really frustrated about them.
Yeah. Hey, you're still recording, so I don't know if you want your personal.
Oh, shoot. Dude, I'll have to cut that. I'll have to cut off a bunch of this. Oops.
Listen, have a wonderful night, and I'll see you again.